Giant Orange Records. What is up, everybody? It is Punk Rock Night here at the Giant Orange Records complex. And you know what that means. A lot of high energy music that's fast tempo. It's kind of pissed off and it's kind of snotty and it kind of has a bad attitude, but in a really good way. So here I'm going to talk about some of my top 20 punk rock albums. These are from what I would call the first wave of punk, which is just early to mid 70s to maybe up to the mid 80s. It's definitely before Nirvana broke. From 1970, we have the Stooges Fun House. This might be one of the first punk rock albums, if not maybe the first or among the first. I mean, we got Iggy Pop just going totally crazy on here. This is an incredible record, and I'll say that the songs on this Stooges album, Fun House, are quite long for punk rock songs, but I'd say Loose, Down on the Street, TVI, and Dirt, probably the most punk songs. Well, hey, they're all pretty punk rock songs. And since it's kind of hard to talk about your favorite bands, I'm going to read a little excerpt from this Lester Bangs article. The Stooges also carry a strong element of sickness in their music, a crazed, quaking uncertainty and errant foolishness that effectively mirrors the absurdity and desperation of the times. But I believe they also carry a strong element of cure, a post-arrangement sanity. This is definitely an essential album, any which way you cut it. Whether you like punk rock or not, you need to listen to this record at least every couple of months, just to remind yourself like what the capabilities of music are. It's so stripped down and it's so simple, but you learn that the simple is not so simple. And of course, no punk rock collection would be complete without the Damned. Damned. This one is from 1977. These were some UK punks. A lot of times people are like, oh, those punk rock bands, they couldn't play their instruments and blah, blah, blah. Well, this is a band that absolutely could. The guitar genius, I'd like to say, of Brian James is pretty evident here. I think this might be the only Damned album that he's on, but it's their first album from 1977, and in fact, they cover a song from the Stooges Fun House. But anyway, they kind of make their bold statement here as the Damned, and I would say that look at these guys. Dave Vanian pretty much invented goth rock, the character or the person, by being himself or being whatever his dream of a costume is. Punk rock is all about originality and authenticity and being true to yourself and expressing yourself and not selling out and blah, blah, blah. So another great punk album. This is London Calling by The Clash. This is a double album. One of the few punk rock double albums, because punk rock was all about brevity, getting to the point, being short. Like the first Ramones album was under 30 minutes. This one's a little bit longer, but it is a masterpiece of music. Doesn't matter if you like punk rock or not, give this one a listen. The lyrics, man, every time I read along to this lyric sheet, I'm like, what? Like, I heard that completely wrong. And the lyrics are way, way better than what I thought they were. And anyway, the classics are the classics for a good reason. And man, I haven't spun this one in a while. I put it on recently, and I was just like, my head got kicked out of the room. It was so darn good. This is the Modern Lovers. What a great album, an early punk rock album. It was actually recorded in 1971, 1972, and 1973, but it wasn't released until 1976. And this is the 1986 reissue, which features a handful of bonus tracks like I'm Straight, Government Center, Dignified, and Old. But and Roadrunner, the first song on here, was actually covered by the Sex Pistols, so that just shows you how punk rock this is. But this album was way ahead of its time. And yeah, 6 of the songs were recorded in 1972 by John Cale of the Velvet Underground. And then Kim Fowley organized more sessions in 1973. And these songs just have a painfully honest and almost embarrassingly truthful tonality to them. Some of my favorite lyrics ever written are contained within this album. And I think my favorite songs on here are probably She Cracked and Hospital, and they're back-to-back songs. I'll say this album really bridges the gap between garage rock and punk rock. These were sweet suburban kids from Boston. They weren't like hardcore junkies living on the tough streets of New York City or anything like that. Jonathan Richman was their singer and songwriter. And I saw Jonathan Richman several years ago, and he autographed my copy of the album. He actually misspelled my name. He spelled it with a PH and then crossed it out and put the F on there, corrected it. So I thought that was like cooler than ever. He was such a nice fella doing his solo act. It's really a shame that this band couldn't get along for too long, because they should have made more music, but Jonathan wanted to go a different direction. He wanted to go more kind of lighter singer-songwriter direction and less of the kind of hard driving music that they made here. But there are some other members that are worth mentioning who played on this album. Jerry Harrison, the keyboard player, went on to join the Talking Heads. Their drummer, David Robinson, went on to start a little band called The Cars, and Robinson is even the guy that came up with the name The Cars for that band. Not too shabby, huh? Here's a mind blaster from 1978. This is DEVO, Are We Not Men? Q, question, are we not men? Well, they answer it on the insert here. Answer, we are DEVO. And this hat, by the way, says actual size on it. So it shows that these dudes from Ohio have quite a sense of humor. I learned from reading the liner notes that this album was actually recorded in Germany, of all places. Like, who would have thunk? And they got all the lyrics on here on the insert. And I got this one from the collection of John Allure, by the way. He was a dear friend of mine that I never got to meet due to some unfortunate circumstances. He passed away shortly before I met all the people that seemed to know him. And everyone kept saying, y'all have the most similar taste in music of all time. Y'all are just kind of like kindred spirits and blah, blah, blah. Like, he loved garage rock, he loved punk, he loved all the 60s shit, the 70s punk, everything. But I've become pretty good friends with his brother, Tom Allure. He plays drums in a band that I play in. And one day he was very gracious and gave this record to me from John's collection. Anyway, like, again, like, punk is just, it's so, like, different and whatever, like, it's just alternative music. It's expect the unexpected from punk. Like, everything that you can't do, can't say, that's taboo, you can say that, and this is such a classic album. And here's one from 1979. This is the B-52's self-titled debut. And gosh, what a strange and bizarre and beautiful record this is. I'd never heard this album until a few years ago. And like, once upon a time, I was a wedding DJ during a time of my life where I needed weekend jobs to make it. We played a song called Love Shack all the time, and it's probably the most played out B-52 song, and I swear that song is not really representative of their sound. This album just, like, my head kind of exploded mentally when I heard this, like, Planet Claire, 52 Girls, Dance This Mess Around, Rock Lobster, like, what in the world is Rock Lobster? That has to be one of the weirdest songs that's ever been a hit. I love the bizarreness and the wacko-ness of all this. It truly is punk rock because it's fuck you. Fuck you to the norms. Here's one from 1978. This is Blondie's Parallel Lines, and like some people might consider them more of a new wave band than a punk band, but from the folks that I've met and known that were there in the late 70s, early 80s at CBGB's, they said all these bands were pretty much equals. Some of them happened to have big radio hits and some didn't. I'd say the difference between new wave and true punk is the new wave band had radio airplay. But anyway, this is Parallel Lines, one of the earlier Blondie albums. It's really good. I found this one at a thrift store ages ago, paid a whopping $1.99 for it. And I was just like stunned that this one was there. There's a song called Hanging on the Telephone. First track, that's actually a cover of a Nerves song, which the Nerves are a great band. I wish I had them on vinyl, but they've gotten out of control, expensive, super hard to find. Like you could maybe find it on the internet for several $100s, but I think for the meantime, I'll live with Parallel Lines. I haven't spun this record in probably over 10 years, and I put it on recently, and what blows me away is just how creative this band is in their playing and the intricacies and the nuances. And Debbie Harry she has to be one of the best singers of all time. She has such a strong, powerful, incredible voice. So there's this book, and it's called Please Kill Me, The Uncensored Oral History of Punk Rock. This is by Legs McNeil and Gillian McCain, who I met once and actually signed my copy of the book. Very nice of them. They did a reading of the book at the Tin Roof. It was a venue in Charleston, South Carolina, way back when I lived there. My friend Johnny Puke hit me to this book, and me and a whole hell of a lot of my friends read it. It's kind of one of those, like, you don't want to meet your heroes kind of books in a way. Talks a lot about the history of punk rock as told by the people that were there and lived it. It's a lot of anecdotal stuff. This is Johnny Thunders and the Heartbreakers on the cover, by the way. Do you remember that year, 1977? Well, that is when television released Marquee Moon. This is a reissue on clear vinyl. But man, what a guitar album. And this is one that I hadn't really listened to a lot until people started telling me that, like, hey, the songs that you and your band play sound kind of like television. So I started listening to television a bit more, and I realized that one of my favorite bands and big influences, The Clientele, is very influenced by television. But these guys were a big part of the CBGB scene, New York City, 1970s. Again, 77 might have been the best year for punk rock releases. Maybe they didn't sell well or whatever, but this is a guitar jam workout. Tom Verlaine led this band. In an early incarnation, actually, Richard Hell played bass, and I think they kicked him out because they said he wasn't all that good for the band. So that brings me to another 1977 album. This is a reissue. Richard Hell and the Voidoids, Blank Generation. I mean, this guy was one of the most poetic punk rock writers of all time. And between the guitar playing of Robert Quine and Ivan Julian, like, this is an insane guitar album. And again, Richard Hell played like a Dan Electro bass guitar. He played bass and sang lead vocals, which is unusual. He was also one of the first guys that kind of made a big fashion thing out of punk rock. He had no money for new clothes, and when his t-shirt ripped, he or somebody he knew, they put safety pins across his t-shirt to cover up the rips. And then the whole safety pin thing became like a punk rock fashion statement. He did it out of necessity. Everybody else did it because they were trying to be cool. Walking on Water, Blank Generation, The Plan, Love Comes in Spurts, Liars Beware, Betrayal Takes Two, Down at the Rock and Roll Club. Like, this is a very, very essential punk rock album. And again, to all the naysayers, you're like, punk rock bands don't know how to play their instruments. I present to you Blank Generation. Whew. Johnny Thunder and the Heartbreakers, LAMF. This is the Lost 77 Mixes version. This proves that music and lyrics don't have to be sophisticated to be good. It's just fun rock and roll. It's good music for driving in the car. And I think it has kind of a Rolling Stones vibe, but it's more punk rock. Like Jerry Nolan's drums are super, super hard hitting. Incredible stuff. And Walter Lure's guitar playing. Good stuff. And of course, Johnny Thunder's stage name, obviously. Some of the coolest, hippest cats around. I'll say that once I learned that most of these songs are about that terrible drug heroin that kills people, I just haven't listened to it as much because I just can't relate. But I do enjoy the music for the sake of the music. Chinese Rocks is here, and you can just forget that these guys made some poor life choices, perhaps. Johnny Thunders in particular, but what an incredible artist. And they gave us this great album. Again, another band that only made one album. The initial mix ended up being kind of muddy because there was some kind of a mastering error when this was made in 1977. And then the record label went under and the tapes were lost or stolen. Nobody really knows exactly what happened. Then in 1984, Johnny Thunders made a remix of the album. Then in 1994, there was another release from tapes of the alternate mixes from 1977. In 2020, co-producer Daniel Secunda found a copy of the 1977 master tape in his attic. And in 2021, the found 77 masters were released. Now, this copy is printed in 2017. This one came from England, actually. I bought it at a local record store called Wax Records in Vero Beach quite some time ago. And it is just a fantastic record. I'd say this 2017 mix sounds pretty good to my ears. I remember having a copy on an iPod years ago that, it was a little iffy, but I haven't heard the new mix. Be curious to know if anybody has. And here's another one from 1977 from England. This is a band called The Boys. The album is called The Boys. Some people have called them the Beatles of English punk rock. I wouldn't quite go that far, but this is shockingly similar to Johnny Thunders and the Heartbreakers, just without the heroin. They sing about normal stuff like boys and girls and things like that. And gosh, my favorite song on here, I think, is called Kiss Like a Nun. That's a fun one. And they even cover the Beatles' I Call Your Name on here, early Beatles. But I just love the artwork on this. Has that cool kind of, Andy Warhol printed art kind of thing. Kind of dark but colorful at the same time, which leads me into this next album by the Circle Jerks. They have very, very similar aesthetic, and I just love that. Now, the Circle Jerks album is called Group Sex. It came out in 1980, and I think this album was a grand total of 17 minutes long. Has some great songs on here like Deny Everything, Operation, Wasted, Whirled Up My Ass, Just Don't Care, Live Fast, Die Young. Incredible album. Keith Morris was their lead singer, and these guys are still playing out gigs today. And also from California, from San Pedro, this is the Minutemen's Double Nickels on the Dime. I found this record at Rock and Roll Heaven in Orlando several years ago. It is an incredible album. I mean, this is probably one of the few punk double albums. Each band member gets a side. And then I think the last side is all of the band members kind of choosing what to do. This Ain't No Picnic. It's a great song. Corona, you probably heard that song as the theme song for Jackass. It's hard to talk about your favorite albums, right? But God, this was on SST Records. Just the Minutemen's whole thing was We Jam Econo. And that's a great documentary that's on YouTube. You should watch it if you haven't seen it yet and you want to know a little bit more about the Minutemen. My favorite song on here is called History Lesson Part 2, which they talk about how they were inspired by Joe Strummer and Richard Hell and all these other punk bands. And it contains the lyric, "Our band could be your life," which was also the name of a book written about 80s underground punk rock. And the Minutemen even get their own chapter in that. Here are the Replacements from 1981. This is Sorry Ma Forgot to Take Out the Trash. This is some pretty aggressive, in-your-face punk rock, really fun stuff. Bob Stinson's lead guitar playing is really incredible on here. I mean, the whole band is great. And of course, Paul Westerberg was their singer and songwriter. And they also get their own chapter in that book, Our Band Could Be Your Life. And one of the funnier stories from that is this band used to go into venues' green rooms and play beer bottle baseball, which meant that the bat and the ball were beer bottles. And you can imagine that that was fun, but probably made a great big mess. This is Scream's This Side Up on Discord Records. This album came out in 1985. And what a wonderful album. This is a reissue, obviously. I think the original pressings have a different color. It's not gray, it's like pink or yellow. Incredible stuff here. This band, just check them out. I think Bet You Never Thought, great song. This Side Up, Still Screaming. Man, The Zoo Closes at Dark. Like, the whole album's good. And fun fact, Dave Grohl played in this band, and he actually knew all their songs because Dave Grohl would obsessively just play along with records until he knew every drum part. And then Scream's drummer, I guess, left in the middle of a tour, and Dave Grohl happened to fill in. And keeping with the theme of 1977, as so many of these albums featured here, that was a great year for punk rock albums. This is Elvis Costello's My Aim Is True. Now, this guy brought sort of clever, sophisticated music and lyrics, and he kind of has that Buddy Holly look. And Elvis Costello, it's obviously a stage name, but gosh, what a great album. I think Watching the Detectives is my favorite song here. But Welcome to the Working Week, Miracle Man, No Dancing, Blame It on Kane. Allison's probably the big hit here. Angels Want to Wear My Red Shoes, Lesson Zero, Mystery Dance, Waiting for the End of the World, I'm Not Angry. There's not a bad song on here. I mean, this guy really nailed it. While we're in England still, I want to present to you the Soft Boys, Underwater Moonlight. What an incredible record. This is more on the psychedelic side. It mixes punk rock influences and psychedelic music. Robin Hitchcock is a huge Syd Barrett fan, and that really comes across in their music here. I mean, what strange album art. I Want to Destroy You, the first song on here. The Circle Jerks actually covered that song. So that's how punk rock this is. You might say, oh, it's super psychedelic and it's not that punk, but it really is. The attitude is very punk rock. Kingdom of Love, Positive Vibrations, I Got the Hots, Insanely Jealous, Tonight, Queen of Eyes, Underwater Moonlight. There's not a bad track on this incredible album. This is the Yep Rock reissue. In keeping with the theme of 1980 English releases, well, partly English, Chrissie Hynde was American. She was from Ohio, but the rest of the band was from England. And golly, this is one heck of a debut album. And I found this record for $10 in really great condition. James Honeyman Scott's guitar playing is just incredible on here. I just love this album. Mystery Achievement, such a great song. Yeah, Precious, The Phone Call, Tattooed Love Boys, Stop Your Sobbing, Kid, Private Life, Brass in Pocket. So good. I just absolutely love this album from The Pretenders. Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, Bad Reputation. This is a great album full of very poppy songs. Make Believe, what a great song. You Don't Know What You've Got. They cover You Don't Own Me. Wooly Bullies on here. I mean, this is such a fun album, and I just love her look with the all black and the charcoal. What a badass Joan Jett is, and her attitude is just incredible here, and backed by a really, really tight band, and her own guitar playing is really cool. Now, here's a little EP from Bodysnatchers. This came out in 1977. This band was from Austin, Texas, a town that is rich with musical history. And this is a test pressing. They only made 15 copies of this test pressing. It came out in 2024. It's been reissued. Then it got reissued on Record Store Day 2024. And this is number 10 out of 15 on the list of test pressings. There's not much information on here. I think one night I accidentally played this record at the wrong speed. I can't remember if it's on 33 or 45 because there's like literally no information on this test pressing. It's just the cover and it says A and B and test and third man pressing. But I'll say that it sounds good at 33 and 45, and that's how good this music is. And this band actually had two bass players. One of them played lead bass and one played bass or something like that. Taking it to California in 1980, this is Surf Punks with My Beach. My beach, my wave, my chicks, go home, my sand, my sun. They kind of make fun of the surf culture and like all the California girls and Valley girls and all that good stuff. But and they quote Jimi Hendrix on here, and you'll never hear surf music again from Third Stone from the Sun. Kind of a funny album. It's more of a conceptual joke and I'd say it kind of pokes a little bit of fun at the strictness and seriousness of surf culture. There are a lot of rules in surfing and surf culture, and I got here first and you can't come to my beach and all this kind of stuff. But this is a fun, enjoyable record. There's this subgenre of punk called psychobilly, and here's another like funny, jokey record. This is Mojo Nixon and Skid Roper, Get Out of My Way. This is a mini album, I guess. I found this one at Sounds Good Records, like deep in the vaults there. It's on clear vinyl. This one came out in 1985. The song Get Out of My Way is just absolutely hilarious. And sadly, we lost Mojo Nixon earlier this year in 2024. He passed away on the Outlaw Country Cruise. From the hype sticker, the Right Reverend Mojo and his washboard-bearing sidekick Skid are back to cleanse the soul with revivals of old family favorites like Stuffin' Martha's Muffin and Jesus at McDonald's, plus a slew of new inspirational numbers, including Burn Down the Malls, Son of Santa, and a special hymn to freeway traffic, Get Out of My Way. This special edition colored vinyl disc is guaranteed to turn any down-home gathering into a Schaefer-swilling, food-fighting, knockdown, drag-out pagan party. Also available on high-quality XDR Cobalt CS1 cassette. That was called 20 punk rock albums. It was actually 24. But this reminds me that my punk rock album collection is missing a lot of pieces, and punk rock is a diverse genre. There's a lot of layers and depths to it, but I don't have any MC5, Cramps, or Buzzcocks on vinyl. No Undertones, no Misfits, no Plasmatics, no TSOL. But I will say that punk rock vinyl is really hard to find. I don't have any X, I don't have any Black Flag, but ironically, punk albums are very expensive due to their scarcity. Punk rock is all about freedom and individual expression and being authentic and being true to yourself and true to whatever you believe in.
Giant, orange, giant, orange, giant, orange, giant.